Hello and welcome to another episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm Chip Griffin.
And I'm Ginny Dietrich.
And Jenny, I don't have a witty opening. I just have a message for people.
Okay.
Stop being afraid of AI. Just stop it. Knock
Amen.
it off.
Yes, totally agree. 100%. Yes.
The amount of hand wringing that I see, not just in the agency world, but elsewhere
In
around
general, yeah.
AI,
Sure.
it's going to take our jobs. It's going to mean that we can't charge clients as much. We're going to lose business because of it. We're going to get scammed and conned because of it. It's, yeah, I mean, just all of these things. Just take a deep breath, folks.
Yeah.
Take
Yeah.
a deep breath. You don't need to go out and disclose everything. You don't need to go out there and, put it into your contracts that you use AI. Have you used a grammar checker? Yeah. Okay. Do
Right.
you put that in your contracts too?
Right.
Do you use
Right.
interns? Do you put that in your contract too? I
Yeah.
mean, come on, folks. Let's take a
Yeah.
deep breath.
I totally agree with you. And I think that I agree that it's not going to replace us. I do think it's going to change the way that we do our jobs. It's
I
going to
hope
make us
so.
more effective. Does that mean that we can charge clients less? No, because we're going to be doing more strategic, thoughtful work than like the tactical administrative stuff. And the way I like to think about it and the way I present it to our clients is, what are some of the things you have to do that you don't enjoy doing? It could be anything from media list development to data research to metrics reporting to results reporting to drafting presentations. Like there's all sorts of what I would call administrative tasks that we have to do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, because they're critical to our jobs, but not necessarily things we enjoy doing. That's what AI can help you do. So rather than say, well, I have to sit down and I have to pull all the reports from analytics and then I have to look at the metrics and figure out what changed. Like AI can do all of that for you. You don't have to worry about doing that kind of stuff. And then you can focus on the things that you really enjoy doing. If it's strategic work, if it's writing, if it's, Google ads, if it's PPC, whatever it happens to be that you enjoy doing, you can focus on that.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are so many benefits that potentially can be had from it. Now, I mean, one of the big things that I hear is, well, it's going to cut down our rates. Well, like for like, it ought to, right? Like for
Yeah.
if you're not doing something new and different and additional, you
Right.
absolutely should charge less for the things that
Yes.
AI is helping you do faster, because
Yes.
that's what happens with all technology. I mean,
Correct.
back when I started in the agency world, we charged people for photocopies and faxes and the time that
Right.
it took to do those things. Do
Yes.
you charge people for that today? No, and you shouldn't, because you're not using copies and faxes
Right.
and things are faster. When I started out in the agency world, I spent every morning going through newspapers with an X-Acto knife and cutting out stories and taping them onto a piece of paper and photocopying them and then sending those as faxes. All of that was billable time for the client project, whether you billed by the hour or factored into your project cost. It was all there. You
Yep.
don't do that anymore. You get your
Right.
Google alert or your alert from some other system and you just have it and you forward it along a lot faster. You should absolutely charge less for that work than
Yes.
you did 30 years ago when it was all
Yes.
manual.
Right. Yeah. And so exactly that, when you think about, okay, if we're going to spend less time doing all of the things that we've talked about and more time doing the things that we're really good at or enjoy doing, then yeah, you're going to charge less for those administrative tasks, which to your point, you should, and more for the things that the outputs that actually result in moving an organization's business forward. And clients are going to be happier with that. I mean, I've used the example of the client of ours that does the hour-long webinar every week, and how it used to take us 2 weeks to create all the assets for one webinar, and now it takes us like 45 minutes. The budget hasn't changed, but we've shifted the work that we're doing, and we can do more strategic work that, quite honestly, we've had on the back burner for a couple of years because we haven't had the time or the budget or the scope to get to it. And he's completely happy because he's getting things a lot faster. He's communicating to his audience more quickly, and we're getting to do more work. So it hasn't reduced our fee, but it has reduced the way, or changed the way that we do the work.
Right, because you've continued to evolve. And I think any agency that is not continuing to evolve, whether it's AI or anything else, you can't do business the same way that you did
Right.
it 5, 10, 20 years ago.
Right.
You have to change. The your audiences are in different places, the technology is different that you use to get your work done, the workforce is different. All of these things contribute to the need to
Yep.
evolve and adapt and come up with new things that you can be doing that are more effective than the things that you did those 5 or 10 years ago when it was a lot more difficult to do certain tasks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to your point at the very beginning, stop being afraid of it. Stop wringing your hands. I think there was a conversation about it in the SpinSucks community. And I think some people are really worried about things like, what if we get scammed, or what if somebody uses our voice, or what if somebody uses our likeness? Well, guess what? There are bad actors no matter what. And people are going to use all of this to scam people just because that's what they do. It's not any different than them scamming people with phone calls or with mail or anything else. It's just a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, does AI come up with some more interesting ways of doing scams?
Sure.
Sure,
Sure.
absolutely. But people have been being scammed for centuries.
Right.
People even today are still being scammed by simple things like phone and mail and
Yeah.
email.
Yeah.
You don't need the fancy AI stuff to get there. If you're susceptible to being scammed, does the AI make it a little bit easier? Perhaps, but it also is something that's out there no matter what.
Right.
And for folks who are worried about that, you need to address the whole culture of scamming, not the technology around individual pieces, because otherwise you're just being playing whack-a-mole. And what are we going to try to do? Just get rid of everything? You
Right.
can't get rid of all technology.
Right. Right. Yeah. And I think, I think there's a pretty big opportunity in here for agency owners that we're not necessarily thinking about. And I did a recent SpinSucks podcast episode on this. But I think there's an opportunity for us to think about AI in a new way, and especially for agency owners, how we might create things that we can build a subscription model on, for instance. So, say that you're doing sentiment analysis and media monitoring and crisis preparedness and results reporting. AI can do all of that for you now, and you create it in a way it's applicable to your specific client. So you have an AI that does it for all four of those things, for instance, for one client, and you offer that to the client as a subscription model because it's created, and it's sort of a passive income thing where they get a report as often as they want, daily, weekly, monthly, however they want it, and they get exactly what they want. And then you have the oversight of saying, okay, we saw this in your report and this is what it means, or this is what you should be thinking about. And so you're adding on that layer of strategic oversight, so then you're getting paid for that too. So I think there's a really big opportunity for us to be thinking about how we create our own AI and how we train existing models to be able to, quote unquote, sell it to our clients.
Absolutely, and the opportunities really do abound. And if you look past the immediate fear and you start to say, okay, well, how can I take advantage of this?
Yep.
You end up in a better place. And so, I
Absolutely.
think about agencies that do a lot of creation, whether that's writing or video or photography or audio or all of those kinds of things. And I hear a lot of folks in those communities saying, "Oh my God, AI is going to take away my job as a writer because nobody's going to pay me to do this." And guess what? If it's run of the mill SEO volume work, yeah,
Right.
I mean,
Sure.
absolutely, you're not going to be
Yes.
able to make a living writing
Right.
that kind of schlock. The fact that you could up until now is just, you were lucky. But that's if you're writing original stuff, things that can only be done by someone who actually has the knowledge,
Right.
and that you're tapping into your expertise or the expertise of your clients and you're communicating that in an original way, you'll be fine. It's like photographers. People know I do photography on the side for the most part. And so in that photography community, there are a lot of folks who are like, well, this generative AI, it's destroying it. I don't want them taking my images because it's going to put me out of business. Well, then come up with photographs that can't just be duplicated. If you're taking a photograph of the exact same thing as everybody else, if you're just doing stock photography, yes, those are the kinds of things that are going to go away, but there's still plenty of opportunity to be had if you look for it and you think creatively.
I think that's a really good example too, because everybody freaked out when the phones was introduced on the iPhone and later the Android, right? The photography industry was like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to be replaced because everybody can take a picture." And that's true. We can all take pictures. But Chip, you started your side business what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, after all of this came about. So people have their phones, their cameras on their phones, and you're still able to do professional photography work because you're doing different things and you're doing it in a way that's appealing to your community. So I think, to your point, that's a great example of things change. Technology is coming at us really fast, and the way that we adapt to it is what's going to set us apart.
Yeah, I mean, the photography that I do is sports photography. I mean, you can't do AI images of a game because the game hasn't happened.
Right.
And and in order for it to do it, it would need to be able to tap into something, in other words, video or photos that someone had already done of the game.
Right.
So as long as you're creating original stuff, or I do senior and family photos,
Yep.
AI is not going to create, your family photo for you.
Right.
It may help improve it, and most photographers I know use generative AI to improve images.
Sure.
And
Sure.
so it's kind of hypocritical for you to use it in your product that you're creating and say, well, I don't want my stuff to be helping to train it. I don't want
Right. Right.
others to have access to it because it's going to put me out of work. Right. So, and if we think about these things, and we're so protective of the way that we do things, whether it's our job or our agency or whatever, we lose out on everything that takes place. And we've been going through this cycle for a long time. I mean, how many blacksmiths are there out there today? A lot fewer than there were 150 years ago.
Absolutely.
Have you found a horse and buggy driver outside of Central Park in the last,
No.
50 years? Probably not.
Yeah.
They all things shift as technology shifts. We need to adapt with it and not freak out by it. And I think it's the overreaction that's going to put a lot of individuals and agencies into trouble, because
Right.
you're going to lean so heavily into it and say, well, this changes everything, right? And I can just do
Right.
everything entirely
Right.
differently.
Yep.
Or you resist it all and you say, no, I need to protect the way things were. There's a happy middle ground in there where you'll have a thriving business that does great work for clients.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, yes, we have continue to evolve. If we don't evolve, we're dead. So the idea that we're going to bury our heads in the sand and pretend this isn't happening is the wrong thing to do, because it's happening. And this, I may have already said this on this podcast, but it reminds me of like 2010-ish, when I started speaking to groups of CEOs, and I would talk about social media, and they'd all be like, "Nope, it's for the kids. It's a fad. It's not going to affect my business." And I would be like, "No, it is going to affect your business, and you are going to have to use it." And the mass majority of them would be like, "Nope, don't have to worry about it. I don't need to hear this la 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 la." They'd stick their fingers in their ears. And look where we are today. So this is the same thing. Like, don't stick your fingers in your ears and yell la 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 la. Don't stick your head in the sand. It's too late to put the genie back in the bottle. It's here. So figure out ways to grasp the opportunity and make the best out of it for your agency.
Yeah, and look, I mean, the reality is that in the agency world, jobs have gone away in our lifetimes in the course of my career.
Yes.
If I look
Yes.
back 30 years ago, every agency had an admin assistant or secretary or something like that who handled all of these things like faxes and photocopies and answering the phone and filling out the while you were out slips and all of these things. That doesn't happen. I can't think of an agency that has a pure admin. There are ones who have maybe some office manager type responsibilities, but usually with substantive
Yep.
stuff alongside of it, because you can't fill 40 hours a week.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and so we've seen these changes take place in our lifetimes, but we've also seen the creation of new jobs. When I first started out,
Right.
nobody was doing digital media. Nobody was
Right.
doing social media. PR
Right.
agencies tended not to get into paid media at all. And now we have the
Right.
lovely peso model, and
Right.
that informs you how you can go out and do a bunch of different things under the same umbrella in order to help your clients most effectively.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm thinking about, when I worked at Fleischman Hillard, and there was a receptionist, and all she did all day long was answer the phone. That doesn't exist anymore, because we all use our cell phones. Like, I remember a time where it felt weird to give your cell phone number to clients or to use your cell phone for business purposes because you had a desk phone. Well, that hasn't happened in years, right? At least not for me. So the idea that you would have a receptionist sitting there at the front desk only answering phones is antiquated. Are there other things that person can do? For sure, but it's not the same role that was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, man. When I worked on Capitol Hill, there were literally people in our office who did nothing but answer the phone because it just
Isn't that
rang
crazy? That's crazy.
all day long. And on my desk, I had one of those big metal spokes where you every time you returned a phone call on the pink message slip, you just,
Oh, sure,
you know,
you'd stick it on it. Yeah.
the satisfying feel of,
I
putting
love
it
it.
down on the spike.
I
Like that's
love it.
another, and you'd see it grow, and you're like, wow, I did a lot of work.
Oh man, I was productive today.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I think a lot of people listening probably never experienced that, and probably don't even understand what the heck I'm talking about.
Fair.
I mean, a significant number of agency employees, at least, if not owners, don't know what a while you were out slip looks like.
Yeah.
But those of us who were around 20 or 30 years ago, it's etched into our brain because we had so many of them sitting on our desks in our offices.
Yeah.
You come back from lunch and you're like, oh, here's a stack. Great. Fantastic.
Right.
So you just need to learn to evolve, and instead of freaking out about artificial intelligence, you need to use the other kind of AI, actual intelligence, to come up with an actual plan to move forward. And for those of you who are not watching on video right now, we are getting a cameo appearance from Ginny's daughter, who is on her first day of summer break and apparently really likes the camera.
It's going to be a long week.
I would a long week. You have the whole summer.
Well, camp starts next week. So.
Okay. Well, so you only have a week to get through this then. I guess this is a backdoor way for her to get some screen time, though. But
she's trying.
If her screen time is watching me, I feel really sorry for her.
I was telling Chip before we started, I don't allow the screen, so she's antagonizing me.
Yeah. Well, before this totally devolves and goes downhill, because the AI isn't going to help you manage that situation, so we probably should wrap up this episode. I feel like I've gotten this rant off my chest. I'm sure be afraid of it. It's not our first time talking about AI. I would be consistent in my messaging, but we'll come back to this periodically because it's going to be something that you all need to be thinking about. And truly, it is all technology. It is not just we're talking about AI, and AI is the popular one today. But as you point out, we had this with social media, right? You had the same kind of thing. You had the overreaction in both directions. Social media destroys everything else media relations wise, or, oh my God, it's a huge threat.
Yep.
The truth is almost always somewhere in the middle. So find that middle ground and you'll be successful.
Yeah. And like I said, I think there's a big opportunity for agencies right now. So find that opportunity. Yeah.
Huge. Absolutely. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of the Agency Leadership Podcast. I'm almost speechless here. We now have a dog on the video here. So if you really want an entertaining version of the show, watch the video version. Don't just listen to us.
This is like a replay of 2020 all over again.
It does feel a bit like that. Yeah. So on that note, I'm Chip Griffin.
I'm Ginny Dietrich.
And it depends.